You are now listening to
Chakras and Shotguns.
Welcome to Chakras and Shotguns, the podcast that guides you on a journey of spiritual development and personal preparedness. I'm Mik, a marketer, shamanic healer, and prepper.
And I'm Jenn, a former lawyer, yogi, and reader of tarot.
Every day we use phrases like, that really resonated with me, or that rings a bell. We don't even really think about how these phrases underscore the importance of sound and sound waves in our lives. Today we get into the science of sound and how sound can be used for healing. We welcome Brendon Henderson, a prolific sound healer, to the show to help us dive into this modality.
Before we get into that, though, I want to give Mik a shout out. He's partnering with Riverbank LA at 5259 West Pico in Los Angeles to offer in-person Reiki energy healing sessions on select dates. So if you have been wanting to get some energy healing from Mik, but you wanted to do it in person, this is your chance. His first day will be this Friday, June 23rd, and he's offering 25% off his normal rate. Discount, okay? There are still a few spots left, so go ahead and book using the link in the show notes.
Yes, indeed. Pull up on me. All right, let's get into some breath work.
Find a comfortable seat, or if you would like, lay down in Shavasana, corpse pose. But just find comfort, grounding. Put one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Feeling where your hands meet your body and where your body meets your hands. And let's start to breathe together. Inhale through your nose, expanding your belly, pushing against your hand. And exhale out through your mouth. Again, inhale in through your nose. Breathing into all of the space inside of your body. And exhale that breath out through your mouth. One more time, inhale through your nose. See if you can inhale one more sip of air. And seal your lips closed and exhale that breath out through your nose. Now that you're aware of your breath, see if you can let the sounds that are surrounding you come into focus. Maybe there's the air conditioner going, or kids running around, a car driving down the street, an airplane flying overhead. And observe those sounds that make up the soundtrack of our lives, the background noises that we're always receiving but maybe filtering out. Now that you've observed what's around you, see if you can start to mentally turn the volume down. You've kept your hand on your heart and your belly. See if you can focus solely on the breath coming in and the breath going out. You can play around with Ujjayi Pranayama, which is a constriction in the back of your throat that would make your breath sound almost like the ocean. And just use this breath work, this visualization, meditation as a way to focus your concentration using your ability to hear. If something else gets your attention, that's okay. Remember, the goal of meditation is to notice and observe and then return back to the practice. Start to mentally turn the volume back up on the surrounding noises, bringing awareness back into your body, your fingers, your toes. And then softly open your eyes. And let's move on with the show.
All right. Thanks as always, Jen, for very relaxing, soothing breathwork.
You're welcome. I was trying to basically take candle gazing, which we've talked about before, where you're just focusing with your eyes on like a flame and seeing if we could play around with our hearing, which is something that we don't really use to focus in meditation in that way. So,
All right, so let's get into the main topic. So today we're welcoming Brendon Henderson to the show. Brendon is a former media executive who had a long, prestigious career before dedicating his life to healing. He's a Reiki master and sound healing expert. He joined my most recent men's retreat back in March and blessed us with a wonderful sound bath. Today he's going to break down the basics of sound healing and explain why you should experience a sound bath. All right, let's get into it. All right, so we got the dopest sound healer in LA, Brendon Henderson, joining us today on the show.
What's up? What's up? How y'all doing?
We good, man. Congrats to you and your Denver Nuggets. I feel like you're the only person I know from Denver.
Appreciate that.
Shout you out.
World champs yet again.
All right, so let's jump into a little bit about your background. You want to just tell the folks just a little bit about your story and what you're doing now with the sound healing?
Yeah, for everybody who knows me, I always introduce myself as being from Park Hill, Denver, Colorado, which Park Hill is just a neighborhood I grew up in. It's kind of one of those places, if you know, you know. But from there, I always knew I wanted to work in marketing. I went to Howard and studied that. I worked in marketing for years, got into media more broadly. My most recent sort of like corporate job was leading the video department for GQ. So got into publishing, got into branded content, I worked everywhere from Mashable to the Atlantic to wherever. And my last job was really like hanging out with your favorite celebrities doing video content for the internet. So not a bad gig. But I said all that up to say I was never one of these people who hated my job and I turned my back on it, or like felt like I had to live up to a certain standard at my job or people hated me, whatever. Like, actually, I always wanted to work in the industry. I went and studied it. I worked in it. I loved it. I found other places or other parts of the industry that I maybe didn't realize before I started in it to give myself to and get value from. But then I woke up one day and it just didn't matter to me anymore. So I had always been doing something near to what I knew as Reiki or something near to what I now know as sound healing. I just never had training in it. I never knew there was names for it, but people would come to my house, or I'll be at somebody's house, and then I'll just have like a feeling that come over me, and I'll just start to make noise, be it a humming or even sometimes a high pitched noise. And I would just put my hand on their whatever knee or whatever it was. And I never knew there was a thing called sound healing. I never knew it actually affects you on a cellular level. I never knew any of that. I just was something I was doing. So I end up getting like kind of a oracle reading. Not kind of, I end up getting a reading from an oracle based out of Denver. She's like, Brendon, you have a gift in healing, but as a male, it's going to be hard for you to channel that gift if you're not 100% dedicated to it. Mm. And right now, you know it, but you have one foot in, one foot out. And you need to decide what you're going to do. And so I took that as not just a challenge of like, are you going to live up to your potential, or from my belief, possibly why you're here on this earth in this iteration at this time, but also as a dad and a co-parent, like trying to be responsible in that and figure that out. And I think it took me about 5 months after that to really actually make the leap. But now I have a company called Henno House, which is built around using sound and vibration to help people reach their potential. I focus on athletes and creatives and using sound and vibration to relieve stress, to increase creativity. We could talk a little bit about that, but being in LA, there's a lot of creatives and a lot of athletes. So that ends up being a lot of my clientele, but it's not the only people that I work with.
Got it. You mentioned how sound affects you on a cellular level. So I would love for you to kind of just go into, give kind of folks a little bit of a 101 on some of the science behind sound healing.
Yeah, that could be the whole podcast, to be honest with you, but I will do it. I'll introduce it as brief as possible, and I'll come at it a couple different ways. Sound has been the most just gratifying journey to be on. Part of it is because it can be as broadly defined as you want it to be, and it scratches every itch, right, for me. So like there's a physics component. Like I always say, it's not just metaphysical, it's physical. There's a physics component. There's a quantum physics component. There's a spiritual component. There's a biological component to it. And so it can really go as deep as you want it to. But I always start with the notion that scientifically speaking, we can think about everything as sound. One of the big discoveries of quantum physics, and you think about like sort of the Albert Einstein era of physics study and trying to get to the theory of relativity and all this, one of the biggest discoveries is nothing is actually strictly particle. What that means is everything that we view as a solid is actually a wave. Everything that makes a wave makes a vibration. And when things make waves, when they interact with other particles around them, they make vibration. When things make vibration, they make sound. Said another way, there is no such thing as matter. It's only sound waves slowed down to appear as matter. Something's moving so slow, it looks like it's still, basically, is what I'm saying, right? So everything that is sound is affected by sound. That's the idea of tuning an instrument, right? So that's what sound healing really is doing. It's tuning your body. So there's this doctor, and I'll butcher his name, and I'll give you all the name to put in the description for your audience, but John Below, I'll just say, that's my best. So he put himself in this soundless chamber and started to understand. He can hear his neurons firing. He can hear his digestive cells going, right? And understand the sounds that they naturally make. And even if you sit still, I challenge your audience, sit still in silence. You'll start to hear like a little bit of a high pitched noise inside you. Those are your cells. They're making noise. It's a constant concert within your body. Well, when you're ill, people talk about illness. That's a lack of harmony within your body, right? So you can use sound. I use tuning forks a lot for this, to retune the cells in your body so they can operate at their maximum function. One of the, not easiest, but one of the things that he discovered that was peer reviewed and proved to be true. Every time you introduce an interval of a perfect fifth, so C to G on the scale, right? You create an action within your cell called puffing. Puffing is the release of nitric oxide from your cells into your system. That release, that puffing of nitric oxide, sends a signal to your body to eliminate any viruses or bacteria in your system. So it is a sound-based natural antibacterial, antibiotic, and antiviral. That's what I mean by affecting you at a cellular level. Epigenetics is a whole other way that I'm actually discovering more and more about, which I would love to get into as well, maybe in part of this.
Yeah, I was going to say, so basically I was in band from like 6th grade to 12th grade, and I like rarely was sick until I went to college and I quit band. It's because I wasn't playing music anymore.
It's probably...
It might be.
True.
You know, I'm not the musical one, so.
I know, he was like a perfect fit, and I was like, It's like, yeah, sure, okay.
It's one of these things that we actually know that we're sound beings, right? Like if you think about the language that we use, that resonates with me, or I have dissonance here, or I'm in harmony with that, or this person is high strung, or it's all sound language. I vibe with their frequency. It's all sound language. So we know it. It's just we don't think about it on a day-to-day basis. We're not conscious of it in that way.
So I'm curious more about the epigenetics piece. You were about to go there, so I just wanted to give you the space to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways, right? Even mantra meditation, like all the bija mantras and stuff, that is to affect your cells that are in the places of your chakra centers. Like that's the thing about everything that's spiritual. Yes, it comes from Indian tradition that there are 7 energy centers within the body. But also if you go along the spine, particularly the bottom 5 chakras, you'll see there are clusters of nerves at every center. Like it's within your body, right? And so the bija mantras are to affect those centers. That's what it does. But the epigenetics piece is so interesting to me because it's basically, epigenetics is how non-hereditary things or things that are not perceived to be hereditary actually affect your DNA and they become hereditary, right? So when we talk about things like generational trauma, we're talking about things that affect you on a DNA level, right? Sound can actually affect how those genes present themselves, right? So even down like, so you have I always talk about scale, right? And so there's a scale at which the cells within our body are the smallest things, right? Then there's a scale at which the planets are the cells within the universe, right? Or like there's a scale at which you think about Earth, we are the cells on Earth, right? But if you go down to a smaller scale, even than the cells in that sort of like nucleus, that cell center, then you have your DNA. So I'm talking about affecting you at the very smallest level. Sound is actually able to change how the DNA is presented and then affect how you're passing that down to your children. So I'm now exploring how to specifically help people who are dealing with generational trauma and trying to stop that line with them and pass something new down to their children through sound.
And what does that look like? You know, how often are people working with you to target something like generational trauma?
It's interesting, right? Because it may not be obvious to them. They may come in and Mik, I know you do Reiki as well. They may come to me for a Reiki treatment, which I incorporate sound into my Reiki, right? So I'm going to do tuning forks, and it's going to be based off of protocols that were established by this doctor I'll tell you guys about, who locked himself in that soundproof chamber. But so I have a bunch of different protocols. Some may be, I want to dream more clearly. I want to relieve it, calm anxiety. I'm grieving and I have a tendency towards anger, or I'm grieving and have a tendency towards sadness. Figuring out what those things are. Or maybe it's even like something like addiction, right? And then so it can seem acute to the person depending on where they're at in their journey, right? And so then it's like, oh, I'm here for this. I get anxious during these times. I want to come to you. Okay, I feel like there's energy moving here. What's going on? Or sometimes they'll say, oh, I think something's in my sacral chakra or my solar plexus. And I'm like, actually, when I was feeling there, I felt fine. But there's something's going on in your knee. What's happening there? Oh, I tweaked it on the run. That's not a physical thing. Something spiritual is happening there. And they're like, oh, yeah. Do you have a history of that? Does that run in your family? Oh, actually, my granddad used to have that. And when I think about it, my mom had that. Okay, something's going on here. I need to apply some sound, like figure out what's going on. And then, from there, things will come. So it may not be somebody saying, hey, I have a long line of whatever it is in my family. I want to get rid of it. But as I said, I'm kind of really just exploring, offering it specifically as an offering, because I'm just understanding the power of it generationally myself. I had heard this woman in India talk about how mantras can affect the DNA, but I never really understood the science behind it until like now I'm getting into it.
All right. So I do want to shift a little bit and talk about sound baths. Jenn and I had the pleasure of attending one of your sound baths over at Riverbank. And so I just want to, tell folks who may not be familiar with what a sound bath is, what it is, and, why they should try to attend one.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thank y'all for coming. I appreciated y'all being there. And if you're in LA, I do it every Sunday. So pull up. A sound bath, I think, is best described or most easily described as a guided meditation, but there's no words. I'm guiding you with sound. And why I describe it as that, and people say, well, I can't meditate. Maybe I shouldn't do a sound bath. No, the sound is helping you. And so it's not one of those things where you have to think of nothing or only think of one thing, but the sound is just taking you on a journey. How that happens or why that happens is I'm specifically playing instruments and playing them in a way designed to slow down your brain waves. So when we're in an active state, we walk around all day in what's known as like beta brainwave state. That's active thinking brain, right? When you maybe sit for a second, you do your breathing exercises, you calm down, you can get into what's known as alpha brainwave state. I recommend it for everybody who's doing any sort of mantra work or manifestation work. It's a powerful state to be in, right? When you're still and present and you can call forth your power. Well, even slower than that is theta brainwave state. And what that is the bridge between conscious and subconscious. So you get into a dreamlike state oftentimes within a sound bath. And it's by design. So I always tell people, if you fall asleep, all good. I made you fall asleep. Don't worry about it. It's good, because your system will get into a place of repairing itself as it does when you're sleeping, right? So it's a natural healer because your system is calmed down to get out of, I'm active, I need to be processing things so actually I can calm down, I can heal myself, right? So that's step one of why sound healing is a healing process. The second part of it is what I talked about with the tuning of the body. So just bringing your system sort of in a certain order. I particularly, because I built my practice off of, or for creatives and for athletes, I built my soundscape on the D major scale. A lot of people do it on the C major scale because that relates to the root chakra, but I built mine on the D major scale because that relates to the sacral chakra. So how you express it, how you're expressing yourself. So I am tuning specifically sacral, heart, and third eye with my bowls, specifically to help how people express themselves, what they can see, and how they love themselves, and therefore are able to receive love. So I'm specifically I'm targeting things to help heal you, right? And then the last piece of it is at least in my eyes. And there's a ton of different types of sound healing and a ton of different reasons why you should do it. But this idea of entrainment and how you're affected by sound around you. So throughout the whole week, you've been affected by everybody's sound. So I talked about how you're making sound. If you go around somebody and you feel different or you feel nervous, you got affected by that. If you put on a certain song and you got rowdy, or you put on a certain song and you calm down, you're affected by all this sound. And a lot of it is within the scope of your natural resonance, and a lot of it is not. It's forced resonance, or what we call entrainment. And so a sound bath is meant to get you back to your natural state, right? To calm you back down and sort of like re-protect you from all the vibration that you were exposed to throughout the week, which is why I do it on a weekly basis.
I like that you said that you're able to go to sleep, like you're allowed to go to sleep, because I think a lot of people come into these spaces and they're like, I fell asleep. I didn't get the full experience. And like, I was just tired. Well, I guess maybe I just needed to relax. And that it's like, you have permission to do that.
100%.
What are some other things that people might experience in a theta wave state?
Yeah. Actually, I think at the sound bath you guys were at, there were some interesting experiences, right? So in a theta wave state, as I said, it's a bridge between conscious and subconscious. So for me, I most often experience that when I'm about to wake up in the morning. And I think I'm up, but I'm not up. So I'm conscious, but that's a dream. And I can't remember exactly what was that powerful thing that I was saying, like those type of things. That's like theta wave state, right? People say that they see colors. They may see different colors based off of different bowls that are being played or different instruments. You guys know I play a bunch of different types of instruments. At the sound bath you guys were at, there was somebody who said they were hearing a voice that just kept saying protection, protection. So hearing voices or seeing visions is very common. There are certain people who just actually feel the sound moving throughout their body. I had a woman a couple of weeks ago who, when she couldn't come out of it, first of all, because like it is like, oh, I'm sleeping. It's like one of those, like, how can I wake up? I know I'm conscious, but I can't get up, like one of those type of things. When she came out, she was just shaking. And she's like, I've never felt a vibration like that in my body. I don't know what to do. So like I always say everything is natural. Me personally, if I go to a sound bath, I am knocked out. And the reason is because once you get to that brainwave state, your brain starts to release melatonin. It's telling you it's time to rest, right? And so it's like completely natural. And I'm like a child anyway. You get me in a moving vehicle, I'm knocked out. So I'm KO.
Same.
You mentioned some of the instruments that you play. Can you maybe talk about a couple of those that are unique? Because I know most people kind of just see the bowls, but you have kind of a wide array of things that you integrate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do play bowls. I generally speaking, play 3 crystal bowls. And then depending on what city you might find me in, I'll probably do some Tibet. I'll do some singing bowls. Recently, I was informed that there isn't a known history or tie to Tibet. So that's why I caught myself. But what are known as Tibetan singing bowls that are from maybe a different region, just not quite sure, but the metal singing bowls. So I may use those as well. I have more of them in New York than I do in LA. So sometimes I don't bring them out in LA. I also use a bunch of different chimes. So I'll use chimes, what's known as a flow chime, which people always call the hanging xylophone. It kind of sounds like a xylophone. I'll use koshi chimes, which are more akin to wind chimes, usually it's like bringing people back. And I think the favorite thing that people love the most is probably the ocean drum, which is a drum filled with, so it's a drum you can play, right? Like with a drumstick. It has a goat hide on the side, like you can play it like that. But it's also filled with these metal pellets, essentially, which if played a certain way can either sound like the rain or sound like waves crashing into the shore. And that's how I usually like to play it. And so with me, I like to take people on a little ride with the bowls. And then now I've been going straight into the ocean drum, sort of like bring you to, it's like one of these things I like to take people on a ride in terms of the elements, right? So to me, the bowls are earth, right? And then I want to wash over you with the ocean drum. And then the chimes are more whimsical. It's more like wind, right? And then I have some that I play a little bit more, I don't want to say fiery, but they actually are tuned to the element of fire. So yeah, we're kind of those are the things like you'll always catch me with. And then if you come every week, like some people do, they're like, we didn't have the instrument last week. You didn't have that when I play maybe like a tongue drum or different things every once in a while. I personally love the gong a lot. I just don't own a gong right now. So soon come.
Dope.
Yeah, Mik had the pleasure of doing a sound bath with you, Brendon, before me and him went together.
Right. Yeah.
And you brought out that ocean drum. I think you were like setting up, and he was like, "Oh, wait till you play this. Wait till he puts this shit on." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, and that's like, that is the one that I think sends people the most places, right? That's the one actually that I was playing when the guy was saying he was hearing the voice of protection set come to him. It brings about the most intense reaction. But part of the reason that it does that is because I've already slowed the brainwaves down with the bowls. And so now you're in a state that you can receive it in a much different way. And then I'm always using the tuning forks as well. So I probably start and end with tuning forks just to open up space and kind of like close it or resolve it. But I've had a client come in who's actually a survivor of a hurricane. And that experience is much different than everybody else's when she hears that ocean drum, right? But it was intense for her, but she kind of leaned into it and said it was very powerful for her. So, it can do a lot of different things.
For sure. All right, man. Well, we're going to let you go. Before we do that, though, where can folks find you? What's your website? Tell them a little bit about when they can, catch in with you on the sound bath if they're in LA.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say thank y'all for having me. I love to share this stuff. I feel like sound baths, I see a lot of Black and Indigenous folks going to a lot of different places when it comes to alternative healing, but I don't see a lot of Black folks in sound baths. So anytime I'm able to talk to Black folks about the sound and the power of it, I'm excited. And so I really appreciate y'all pulling up on me. In terms of where to find me, my practice is called Henno House, HENNO House. So that's my @ on social. HennoHouse.com is the site. But for sound baths, my most consistent sound bath is at Riverbank in LA. Riverbank is in Mid-City. I'm there every Sunday at 6:30. If that changes, just find me on social. Sometimes it'll be 7:30 depending on what's going on. But I'm pretty much there every week. I try to get people's week set up right, get to relax a little bit. Yeah, it's no pressure. Take a nap if you need to, and then come back into the work week refreshed. So that's where I'm at. That's where you can find me. And yeah, thank y'all.
Dope. Thank you, Brendon. This was fantastic. I want to go do another sound bath.
Yeah.
Pull up.
We're going to make it happen.
All right. Thank y'all.
Once again, we want to thank Brendon for joining us. Before we go, one more reminder for those in LA and the surrounding areas. Get a Reiki session with Mik this Friday, June 23rd. Sessions are 25% off, and you can book using the link in the show notes.
Finally, guys, if you're loving the show, please subscribe and give us 5 stars wherever you listen.
Namaste.